All right, so this is the Taba model by Michelle Crespo and Lajada Robinson. Now, the founder was Hilda Taba from 1902, and then she died in 1968. She was born in South Africa, but she was an American curriculum theorist. Her curriculum theory was that it should be written by teachers because they had a better idea of what the learners needed and they had more knowledge on the content. The definition for the model, it's a learning model that emphasizes a student-centered approach. Educators should design it as what it was believed to be based on students' interests and needs. And it was also a constructivist approach because it emphasizes active engagement of learners and their learning being hands-on. I tried to shorten this, but there's just no way. There are seven parts, seven steps to this model. The first is the diagnosis of the learning needs. So kind of like a pre-assessment or diagnostic assessment. Then the formulation of objectives based on that assessment. So based on student needs, you form goals. Then the selection of content. So what are the interests of the student? Are the demographics, what's like appropriate for that group of kids? Then the organization of that content. So how are you going to scaffold it? And then selection of learning experiences, organization of learning experiences, ignore my child in the back. And then the evaluation, right? So assess whether or not it was effective, everything that you did based on the diagnosis. All right, significant quote. The curriculum should be built around the needs and interests of the child, not the other way around. Teaching is not merely the imparting of knowledge, but the cultivation of an inquiring mind. The essence of education is not to transfer knowledge, but to stimulate minds. And curriculum planning should be a cooperative effort between the teacher and the student. Doesn't mention anything about anyone higher than the teacher. Now, it's going to be hard to read this because, again, she has 7 steps to her process, but here's an example of it used in an ELA class. I'll go through it really briefly. So first, you would diagnose a learner's ability to read using a diagnostic assessment. Then based on that, you can form reading objectives, and you can put something like, students will be able to analyze the themes in a novel and write a literary analysis based on that. You would select the content. So you can select the book that's age appropriate. I teach 7th grade, so maybe The Hobbit. Organization of the content. So you would divide that into manageable sections. So The Hobbit is rather long. It's a novel, maybe dividing it into chapters and units based on that chapter. And make sure that you provide audio recordings for the chapters for the ESC and ESOL population. Then selection of learning experiences. So you can choose a variety of activities that relate to The Hobbit. Some of the students like to dive into some of the characters that are in that book and some of the figurative meanings that are in that book as well. Organization of learning experiences. You can have Socratic seminars, Gigi, based on the theme, small groups. You can end with a written assignment such as the essay. I apologize for Gigi. And then the evaluation can be a unit test, but it can also be more toward that assessment, the objective. The objective was to write an analysis, a literary analysis. So that can be a good evaluation as well. Now, the history of it. It was developed in 1960s. It was developed because of the limitations of traditional content-driven approaches to curriculum design. The model emphasizes student-centered, collaborative approach to curriculum, influenced by experiences in California. So she was in California in a school district, and that's where she worked. And she saw limitations from standardized testing, standardized teaching, and textbook-driven instruction. So that's what drove her to make these changes. She believed that the curriculum development should be collaborative process that involves the teacher and the students. They need to identify the objectives, the goals, and content as well. She consisted of 7 steps, previously stated. It became popular in the 1970s and 80s because educators began to seek out alternative approaches to what was already happening in traditional teaching. Her motto was seen as a way to promote critical thinking, creativity, and collaboration. And today, the motto continues to be used in different forms. It's influenced the development of other student-centered inquiries that we use today. And then I'll pass it over. I'll mute myself so you don't hear Gigi. Don't forget to unmute yourself.
Okay, sorry about that. Good afternoon, good evening, everyone. I'm LaJada Robinson, and I'll be picking up from here. I'm going to be talking about the criticisms of the Taba model. First, the first difficulty or criticism I'm going to speak of states it can be challenging for students. Um, just to break that down and go into more detail, the open-endedness of the Taba model is one of the biggest obstacles for pupils. The unstructured nature of Taba's inquiry-based approach may be challenging for students who are used to more structured or teacher-led learning experiences. However, students can learn to structure their or formulate their own questions and investigate subjects in a more independent and self-directed manner with the direction and assistance of the teacher. Two, could be challenging for teachers to develop. Well, the difficulty for teachers in developing exercises and questions that will pique students' interest and lead them to a deeper knowledge or understanding without overly prescriptive or constricting directions. This calls for thorough organization, solid graphs of the subject matter that will be discussed or taught, and awareness and of the pupils. Being aware of the subject matter. Three, could be challenging to adapt to all disciplines. It can be difficult to adapt to the Taba model to other academic fields because some topics may lend themselves more readily to inquiry-based learning than others. Just say, for instance, Taba's method may work better with science and social studies than rather than with math or language arts. However, the Taba model can be used to study a variety of subjects and topics if one is, use their imagination and able to adapt to that. Next, are you there? Okay. Next is text, the last number 4. Okay. Text must be determined beforehand. Choosing, I guess it could go with your lesson plan. Usually you do a lesson plan beforehand, but choosing relevant text to utilize within the Tower model is also important. The reading should be difficult and thought-provoking, or difficult, more rigorous, while still being understandable and interesting to the pupils, because we want them to be intrigued. Additionally, teachers should make sure that the text support the course learning objectives and standards, and give students the chance to consider various point of views. We can go to the next one. The next one is 2 examples of the research on the Taba model. I chose 2 articles, or 2 examples. The first one is intentional application of the Taba curriculum model to develop a rural pharmacy practice course. And this article or study was based on to encourage students to become APPE, practice and career ready practitioners. The paper investigated how the curriculum design models can be used as a guide to promote purposeful learning while developing a new curriculum. The research proposes an evidence-based approach to curriculum development that may be duplicated across schools and colleges of pharmacy by including the Taba model. The second one was the analysis of curriculum development stages from the perspectives of Tyler, Taba, and Willer. From the perspectives of deductive, inductive, and cyclical models of curriculum creation. The current study intends to review and compare the stages of the curriculum development system. The curriculum construction process is guided by the development models. This study contrasts the deductive stages of Tyler's curriculum creation, the inductive stages of Hilda Taba's curriculum development, and the cyclical stages of Wheeler's curriculum development. These three approaches each have a separate and important function to play in the creation of curricula. And lastly, we list our different references we use to create the presentation.
Thank you and have a great night. All right, how do I stop recording? Hold on.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, hold on. Let me stop the
I
recording.
can't hear you. I'm sorry, I couldn't even hear you.
Oh, can you hear me now?
I have this iHome, and apparently